Okay, so again, hi, my name's Kate Keishan. I am doing the lecture on building a character for speech. So to get started, here we are, building a character. So if you have decided to do interp, something that you might be considering is kind of like an event that's similar to acting. So, for example, we have dramatic interpretation, humorous interpretation, duo, or thematic. And then we also have OPP, or original prose and poetry, which I include with interp because it is essentially just write your own HI or DI. I have competed in most of these events, specifically duo, TI, and OPP. But I have coached a lot of people in the various different events and also judged even on the state level. So I hope that I can give a little bit of insight into these events. So if you are completely new to speech, the basics that you need to know is that each of these events are given 10 minutes with a 30-second grace period. So dramatic interp or DI tends to be more serious or sad. It can have funny components, but the main content is generally serious. I have absolutely sobbed in DI rounds before, and it tends to be a little bit easier with the acting because you are kind of giving these serious emotions and you generally don't have as many characters. Whereas HI or humorous interp tends to be funnier or lighter. In general, you will have multiple characters, and something that we'll talk about in later lectures is popping. So that is essentially a speech term for when you're switching in and out of different characters. So you might have one character talking up here, and then you kind of zoop your feet together and you cross your arms, and suddenly you're a different character with a different voice. Duo is when you have two performers. So it sounds like Jason and Emmy already did that. It can be sad or funny or any mix of the above. There are just a few unique rules. So you can't make eye contact and you can't touch. So there are certain ways that we do this, like, for example, both looking forward and kind of alternating your gazes. You might look at each other but past each other. And you generally mime doing things, or might even mime touching someone's shoulder, but you have to be slightly out. So those are ways that you can get disqualified. Thematic interp or program of oral interp, I will likely refer to it as TI because that's what it was called when I did it, but it might have transferred over to POI, is where you have multiple pieces spliced together. So you go around one theme. For example, a theme that I did in high school was monsters. And so I had a funny piece, if anyone's read Junie B. Jones, I had a funny piece about her thinking she had a monster under her bed. And then progressively, the piece got more serious as I had a component of a book about someone who lost her sister and felt really guilty about it. For her, guilt was that monster. There was one about assault, actually, and kind of this like idea of real life monsters. And so I spliced all of those together, and so had both serious and funny moments around this theme for 10 minutes. And the unique thing about TI or POI is that you actually have a small binder. So it's about this big. It's typically black, and you hold it and even sometimes use it as a prop. And that's just a unique part of that type of interp. And then original prose and poetry, or OPP, you write and perform your own DI or HI. So something kind of funny actually is that in high school, I wrote my own OPP about nursing and a neonatal nurse who loses her first patient. And I ended up publishing it so that people can use it as a DI now. So it's in one of the main literature companies that publishes for speech and debate. So it's kind of funny. You could do it as a DI, but really that idea of you writing and performing your own. So for all of these different categories, you are not able to use props, but you do wear a suit. So I just put in some examples here because professionalism is pretty important in speech and debate. And specifically with speech, you want to be as undistracting as possible. So if you can see, all of these people are dressed really professionally. There's a few of me or my teammates, but you can see that everyone has pretty low-key suits. You might coordinate, for example, the red, white, and blue picture is 3 different duo pairs. So my partner and I wore pink. We had some friends who were white, and then our other friends, Ivy and Jess from our team, were blue. And so that's just kind of to coordinate and show that you're together. And you can have slight differences, as you see with some of these duos. But you just want to keep things as low-key as possible. So If you're wearing makeup, for example, you generally want to keep that pretty low key, undistracting. You want to have your hair pulled back. Touching your hair can sometimes get you disqualified. So you just want to remain as neutral and professional as possible, and you aren't using these props except in TI when you have the binder, because you want to really bring the story to life just with your actions and your miming. So those are just things to keep in mind. So we're talking about building a character. While we are discussing this, if you guys have any questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat, and I will try and answer them, or you're welcome to unmute as well. But we're just going to kind of go into this and discuss. So when you've decided to do an event, say HI, DI, duo, etc., you are going to be picking a character. And typically what I will do is kind of think about my strengths when I'm looking into a piece. So if you can tell, I look pretty young. So I am 22. I have graduated college. I am about to start a job as a nurse, but people all the time think that I'm 12. And so I generally would go for characters that seemed younger. So I would play kids, or I would typically play women. The very first time that I did duo, I was very new to speech and debate. My partner and I were just trying to find a piece and go to the competition. We didn't have very long to prep. I actually decided to do a piece where I was a guy. He was like a football jock. And so I had to portray just like this really masculine guy. And my partner was much taller than me, and she was portraying this very feminine girl. And we were going through kind of their comedic love story. And so that's why I let you know at the beginning, maybe pick a character that fits you better and then move into challenges later. Because that was really hard. I had to go out to the football team and learn how to throw a football. I was learning how to walk like a guy and doing all of these things. That was super challenging as a beginner. So I kind of wish that I had started with one that suited me more. So again, for me, it was generally younger girls. And as I developed more as a performer, I would voice more like older women, or use people with different accents, and sometimes voice males as well. But just pick things that kind of play to your strengths as a beginner. And then working with accents, I would recommend to pick one that you can actually do, one that hopefully isn't offensive, and also being able to keep it consistent. So generally, if you have a character that you really want the audience to relate to, especially in an HI, maybe like your main character that's like very relatable, kind of the everyman, I would usually use a voice that's more similar to your own. And then if you have characters that are talking in shorter chunks, they might be more likely to have an accent. Just because if you are trying to do an accent, like I had one TI piece where I tried to do a Southern accent and I wasn't very good at it. So it was only for a short amount of time, but it wasn't the most believable. And if I had tried to do that for an entire 10-minute piece, it would have been pretty distracting. So just be wise, kind of, pick an accent wisely. And then I would also recommend, don't just try and do an accent to show off. You might think you have the best British accent, like mine is not too shabby, but if I give a character a British accent just because I feel like doing it, but it doesn't make sense with the story, that's just going to be distracting. So you want to be as authentic as possible. Like I said, age is a consideration. So me as a sophomore in high school playing a football jock who turns into an old man towards the end, that is not the most believable. So maybe picking someone who more similarly resembles you, or at least something that you're able to pull off is really helpful. And again, if you have multiple characters, so especially in an HI or a TI, or even sometimes a duo, you want to make sure that they have distinct enough differences. So you want to make sure it's not like every character seems the same. They do have different voices. They have different mannerisms. Because if you can't tell them apart, that's going to be really distracting. And now we're going to talk about doing a character bio. So I pulled this from a speech and debate website, but basically you want to just kind of think, especially with your main character, like, let's talk about them as a character before deciding how we're going to portray them. So example, name and age. So how old is your character? What is their name? What are kind of the basic things about them? Does the piece say anything about how they look? Do they maybe have like a physical or intellectual disability? What kind of is their personality? Are they very bubbly? Do they think they're better than everybody else? Maybe they're like nervous, maybe they're uptight. Those will give you cues about how to physically act. Another thing to keep in mind is socioeconomic status and education. So often our characters come from pretty different backgrounds, and your background might be super different than that of your character. So the way that you act in your high school in Davis might be super different from your character that you choose to portray. And so what would that look like differently? Um, Place of residence, again, like different regions, different countries. What are they around people? Are they in isolation? Are they a confident city person? There are a lot of things to think about with that. Likes and interests. I like their example about how a bookworm might be more reserved or shy if the rest of the script supports that. So just think about your different friends and their different likes and interests. How does that inform how they talk or act? What can you kind of guess about them, extrapolate even outside of the piece? How do they view other characters? Now, this is huge, especially if you are portraying multiple characters within the same piece, or if you're in a duo. The way that you interact with your teacher is really different from how you interact with your best friend or your little sister. So you kind of want to see how your body language changes around certain people and how their body language would change around different characters in the piece. How do others view them? If your character is getting talked down to by the other character the whole time, they might be a little less confident. Even kind of where we set our gaze. For example, if you're popping from a mom into a little kid. So the mom would generally be looking down and the little kid might be looking up. They might be holding a backpack. The mom, or say, oh, for example, I had a piece where I was playing a nurse and she held a clipboard and a pen and she was kind of writing on the pen. And then as I popped into a different character who was like a nursing student, so nerdy, I know, she held a textbook. And then I had one who was more official, who held a podium. And so you just want to think about kind of what's around them, where would they be looking even within the room. And then you want to talk about their overruling desire and want. And so what is your character's goal throughout the kind of the piece? Like what are they building towards? Because if you have a desire, even if you're not saying it, a lot of times it can come out in your body language or even in how deeply you try and hide it. So if you think about your favorite movies, maybe one of the characters has a secret or something that they really want. You'll typically be able to see that even if you aren't explicitly hearing it from their lips. So moving on, we are now going to do an interactive example. So if everyone wants to just take a look at this, what I want you to do is go through and we're going to kind of make a character bio. So I tried to choose 3 different characters and hopefully you would at least know one. So we obviously have Alexander Hamilton from Hamilton. We have my boyfriend, Tom Holland from Spider-Man, and then we have Rapunzel from Tangled. So these kind of common characters, I want to talk about what kinds of things do they bring up for you? Like, what is their personality like, their socioeconomic status, like where do they come from, what's their background, likes, dislikes, how are they viewed by other characters, how do other characters view them, and then what is their overall desire or want throughout the piece. So whether it's the movie, the play, etc. So if you guys just want to think about it for a second, I am then going to have you unmute, and first we're going to talk about Alexander Hamilton. So I'm going to give you like a minute, and then if you know anything about Hamilton, please unmute and tell me a little bit about how you would play this character, or kind of, yeah, some of the answers to these questions. So 1 minute. Alrighty, so I am sure you guys would probably rather volunteer than have me call on you, so we'll start by trying that. Has anyone seen Hamilton? If you have, please unmute and tell me a couple answers to these questions. It's on Disney Plus, so I know somebody has seen it.
Hi. I was literally watching this like right before this lecture. So.
Love to hear it.
Well, I think his socioeconomic status would be interesting to like, because he's like he goes from like having nothing to being like really rich. I think that would be really interesting to like do in an interpretation. And then his personality, he's like intelligent and stubborn, and he's very passionate
Hmm.
like that. And like how he interacts with other characters is also interesting because it's always like I feel like he's always like looking down on them, and he thinks he's like smarter than every like all the other characters in the play.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emmy. These are phenomenal
Of course.
answers. Yeah, I really like Hamilton actually as an example of this because if you have seen it, actually at the beginning, he's a little bit insecure. He kind of has this like arrogant thing going on and he'll like jaunt around. But then when he, for example, is talking to Lawrence, Mulligan, and Lafayette at the bar for the first time, he is really insecure and he's kind of like, oh my gosh, I've never had friends before, like I don't know if these people are gonna like me, and then they're like, we have to put this guy in front of a crowd, and he's like, oh yeah, and then he gains the confidence throughout. But like you said, the socioeconomic status, he goes from having nothing to having everything. So the way that Lin-Manuel Miranda portrays the character changes throughout kind of the rest of the play. Does anyone else have an answer for Hamilton that they want to talk about right now? Okay, we can be shy. Emmy's off the hook, but I'm looking at the rest of you. Um, all right. Well, we will move on to Peter Parker or Spider Man. It can be from any of the Spider Man adaptations that you would like. But I would love for at least one person to kind of unmute and tell me something that you know about Peter Parker relating to these answers. You can also type it in the chat if you're really scared to talk, but this is a safe place.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
he's pretty caring and kind. He cares a lot about the people he loves, like his family and girlfriend. Um, Socioeconomic status, he wasn't that rich. He just came from a pretty middle class family, I think. I don't know, I haven't seen the movie in a long time. And he is just a normal high school student. I don't
Mhm.
know.
That's
Yeah.
so perfect. So then when it comes to like Peter Parker versus Spider-Man, do you feel like those two kind of like alter egos have different desires or wants, or do you think they're similar?
Well, I think that Well, I mean, yeah, in the movies you do kind of see the struggle as he
Mhm.
tries to figure out like who he is. And I mean, you do see Peter Parker and Spider-Man, but I think they are kind of two separate entities, and at the end of the movie he kind of becomes both. I don't
Ah,
know.
phenomenal. Thank you so much, Rudy. You are now off the hook too. Good job. So yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting because we do have this character who's just like a humble high schooler, but then there is this like really intense bravery and desire to help others. And that can come into conflict with the things that this high schooler might want. Like if you saw Spider-Man Homecoming, like he just wants to go to homecoming and have a normal time, like dance with a cute girl, it's gonna go fine. But then he has this overruling desire of really wanting to protect his city and take care of those less fortunate than him. And so I think that that is a really cool example. So then lastly, I hope some of you guys have seen this movie because I absolutely love it, but we have Tangled. So Rapunzel, can anyone tell me something about her personality and background a little bit?
So she, like her personality, she's like really curious about the world and she always like has this driving passion to go see what the outside world is because she's isolated in the tower because she's like kidnapped or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and like how she interacts with other characters is, um, I mean, I don't really know how to explain this, but like there's like people who look down on her, like her kidnapper like looks down at her and like um tells her not to go outside or something, and then but like she still has that like passion to go outside and learn about the world. So yeah, I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, her like mother or kidnapper, I like how you said that, Mother Gothel, she tends to look kind of down on her and be like, you're so immature, you won't survive out in the world. But then once she gets out there, she really blossoms and is able to express more independence. So even the way that you could play the character within the tower, and then once she gets out towards the end of the piece, that would be totally different, right? Thank you so much for your answer. Awesome. Okay, so we are going to continue. I just want to touch a little bit about growth as a character. So we want to see growth during this piece, especially from the main character. Doing speech gives you the opportunity that's pretty unique to see inside their head and kind of see like what would normally remain hidden from the audience. Speech tends to be like a very vulnerable kind of interaction. Like a lot of these pieces, especially DIs, will be kind of these like tell all pieces almost, like you are witnessing just like such an intimate vulnerable sharing, and so it can get really emotional, but nobody really tells you everything the very second that you meet them, and your character can act accordingly. So even the most honest character or kind of narrator in a dramatic interp might keep things hidden or a little bit closer to their chest at the beginning, and as you start building towards the climax, they might start sharing more. So you're welcome to do that if you would like to. Usually around 8 minutes and 30 seconds is where our pieces will climax and where your character might be the most honest or vulnerable. If you have characters interacting, this might be where their conflict comes to a head. They're like yelling at each other, a secret comes out. It just gets really emotional. And so you just want to make sure that you aren't kind of stereotyping characters too much. You don't want them to be flat. It's not just like, oh, I have a funny French accent and I'm going to keep doing that the whole piece. Like you want to make sure that they are like an authentic human. And that's kind of why we do the character bio, is we want to figure out what is their goal as they're progressing throughout this piece. So I just wanted to give you an example. I don't know, has anyone read The Book Thief? It's like it's a really wonderful book. Yeah. Okay. I see a few nods. So I absolutely loved this piece, and I ended up doing it with my dual partner Trevor my junior year, I think his sophomore year. And so this is like a very messy notes. It was just for us, so it's not supposed to make sense to anybody else, but I kind of wanted to see how is our action rising. So generally in speech, you'll do kind of a minute or a minute 30 seconds of a teaser or a hook, and then you'll have your introduction. So this is where you're actually it's really just you're being your character, you're trying to get the audience invested and involved, and then after about that minute mark, you are going to stop, you're going to go back into yourself, and you're going to say one or two sentences, this is why the story is important, and then you will say the title and the author. And so that is kind of like your thesis statement a little bit. You don't want to give everything away, but something that kind of explains the message that you're bringing across with this piece. And then you go back into your character. So we have our rising action, climax, and then resolution. And so we had like a pretty emotional, like intimate portion where like these bombings are going off, but we didn't get there immediately. We built a relationship between Max and Liesel. Those were the main characters that we chose to portray. And then we had more of this resolution for the last like minute or so, kind of like these more quiet, more intimate moments between our characters. Excuse me, I just need water for a second. So that is kind of like the growth that we go through. So I wanted to actually give you guys the chance to see an example. So this, I'll stop sharing briefly. This is one of my very favorite duos of all time. So I don't know if anyone has seen it. Raise your hand if you have. Maybe the Help duo. No. Oh, we're so set then. Okay, I get so jazzed up. Okay, you have, Jason. I get jazzed up about this duo. I actually know the girls who performed it. One of them was my coach at like a speech camp at Stanford, but they are wonderful, super incredible actresses. They went to James Logan High School in the Bay Area, but they won California State and they won every single national competition with this. So it's very good. I don't know if you've read the book, The Help, but because they're in the national final round, it's going to be about 12 minutes instead of 10, since they allow a little more grace period since everyone's clapping and cheering, whatever. So we are going to watch it, and I want you guys to pretty closely pay attention to the way that they portray their characters. So they are going to each play multiple characters throughout, and they have distinct differences. These girls are phenomenal. So I'm going to play it. If for some reason the sound doesn't work, let me know right away, and I will try and fix it. But just really engage these next 12 minutes, and then we are going to go back to kind of gallery view and talk about it. So again, we will go to, oh yeah, I need to screen share screen. Great. Okay, so we should be able to escape this. Okay, and again, I'm not techie. I told you guys. Okay, so we're still screen sharing. Okay, now I'm making this big, and I'm gonna start around here. Whoa, whoa. Are you guys able to hear the sound? Can someone unmute and just let me know really quick?
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
hear the sound.
Perfect, thank you.
Taking care of white babies. Now that's what I do.
To Miss Stein, Hop and Roll Publishing, New York, New York.
Now, I done raised 17 babies in my lifetime, along with all the cooking and cleaning.
You said it right about something that disturbs me, particularly if it bothers no one else. Well, I like to write something showing the point of view of the help. You see, I was raised by a colored woman.
Now, I know how to get them babies to sleep, stop crying, and go on the toilet bowl before their mamas even get out of bed in the morning.
The colored women down here, there is a white child, and then 20 years later, that child becomes the employer. It's that irony that we love them and they love us, yet we don't even let them use the toilet in the house.
Now, remember, baby girl, you was kind, you was smart, and you is important.
But no one ever talks about it. No one ever talks about it. Well, anything down here. You're my real mama, Abby. I love you.
I love you too, baby girl. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
This is not a story about the American dream, but the American dreamer.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
Because for America to know where we're going, we need to know where we've been.
Sometimes I feel like a motherless child.
We need to realize that change does not come from stories that exploit the suffering of racial conflict.
A long ways from home.
Change begins with a whisper. The Help by Catherine Stockett.
Whoa, whoa. It's Bridge Club Day.
Abeline.
Yes, ma'am. White women never say thank you to the help, especially Miss Hilly. And Miss Hilly is, well, Miss Hilly ain't somebody to mess with.
I hasten to Abeline.
Miss Skeeter. She one of those who talk to the help, and Lord, do it make me uncomfortable.
Hey, Abeline.
Whoa, Miss Skeeter, I get you something?
No, Abeline, I've been wanting to talk to you. I want to interview you about what it's like to work for a white family.
Exactly what you think you're gonna hear.
What you get paid, how they treat you, the bathrooms of
Miss Skeeter, now I do that with you. I might as well burn my own house down. You heard about that color boy this morning, the one they beat with a tie iron for accidentally using the white
I know
bathroom.
things are unstable,
No, I was not gonna
but
do
no
it.
one's ever written a book like this.
And what if you don't like what I got to say? I mean about white people.
Well, it doesn't matter how I feel, Abeline.
Yes, ma'am.
Go get some more coffee.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody knows they carry different diseases than we do. That's why I've designed the Home Health Sanitation Initiative as a disease preventative measure. A bill that requires every white family to have a separate bathroom for the colored health. Separate but equal. That's what Governor Ross Barnett says is right. And you can't argue with the government. Don't you agree, Abilene? You see, colored people are just so different.
Yes, ma'am. Ooh, Lord have mercy. I reckon I'm gonna do it.
Oh, hey,
Miss
Blaine,
Eva,
I know
we're
it's
gonna have to be
a
real
problem.
careful. You're gonna have to change my name.
Of course, but I have to ask you, what changed your mind?
Miss Hilly Holbrook. Whoa.
We decided to meet at Abilene, thinking it's the safest place. We decided, when you're a girl growing up, you know one day you become a maid.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I did. My mama was a maid and my grandmama was a house slave.
Did you ever want to become some man?
No, ma'am. No, I didn't.
What does it feel like to raise a white child when your own child's at home being looked after by someone else?
It feel I lost my own boy. He was 24 years old. That's part of a person's life. He fell at the mill, and a truck come over and crushed his lung. You know, that white foreman threw his body in the back of a truck, dumped him at the colored hospital, and honked the horn. There was nothing they could do for him, so I took my baby home. And he died right in front of me. You know, anniversary, his death comes every year, and I can't breathe. But to you all, it's just another day of bridge. Look, I'm sorry, but please don't give up on me. Whoa.
Then we began to interview other maids. Tuckton's Medina times with complaints of hot hours, low pay, bratty children. But then there are stories like Fenna Amos, with white babies dying in arms.
Just that soft, empty look in her still blue eyes. Just a tiny baby with a tiny hand wrapped around my finger, breathing so hard.
Lavinia.
My grandson was blinded by a man for accidentally using the white bathroom.
Winnie.
I was forced by that white man over and over. But then one day I snapped, and I fought till his face bled, and he never tried again.
Callie.
I just want every white lady that reads my story to know that saying thank you, it's so good.
Sorry, my cat paused it.
And of course, Minna Jackson.
She evil, that woman. Miss Hannah Holbrook been sent up here by the devil himself to ruin as many lives as she can. Now, I know what I did to that woman weren't Christian, but there's something about doing wrong to that woman that make it feel right. She told everybody in town I was stealing, so I couldn't get no work. She said,
Come work for me, Minnie. I can't pay you much.
no, ma'am. No, thank you. Truth is, I'd rather work for the KKK.
Well, Minnie, I told everybody in town you're a thief. You might as well work for me for free. Nobody's gonna hire a sass-mouthin' thieving Negro.
Ooh, so then I went home, and I mixed up that chocolate custard pie, and I watched her stuff it in her mouth like she ain't never eaten nothing so good.
I knew you'd come back, Minnie. What do you put in here that make it taste so good?
Miss Hilly,
Mm-hmm.
eat my shit. What? You heard me, and I wasn't gonna tackle it on Minnie either, or else you'd be known all over town as a woman who ate 2 slices of Minnie shit.
Minnie, that's
Right there.
okay.
Not 1, 2.
What's gonna happen when Miss Hilly read that last part?
Oh no.
You're crazy. Before long, stores is putting our books on the shelves.
You know, I swear I can feel Miss Hilly reading our book right now. And it sounded like she got to that last part. When I go into work the next day, the house is real quiet.
Abilene,
Good morning, ma'am.
when you returned my silver yesterday, there were 3 pieces missing. You can return my silver by tonight, or else I will press
I ain't
charges.
stole no silver.
Then it behooves me to inform you that you are fired, Abilene. I won't tolerate no lies.
It's still
I'm
no
not talking about the silver. I'm talking about those things you wrote. Maybe I can't send you to jail for what you wrote, but I can send you to jail for being
Miss
hostile.
Hilly! Now I know something about you, and don't you forget that. And from what I hear, there's time enough in jail to write every person in Jackson the truth about you. Plenty of time in the papers free.
Nobody would believe something you wrote.
I don't know. I've been told I'm a pretty good writer. Already sold a lot of books. Stop. You a godless woman. And ain't you tired, Miss Hilly? Ain't you tired of being so angry? Now, if you want to press charges, that's up to you.
It's not worth my time.
I didn't think so.
Baby, I love you. Baby, don't go.
Baby, I need you to remember. You is kind, you is smart, and you is important. But Amy's got to go.
Baby, don't go. Baby, don't leave. Baby!
Emily?
Abilene, if anything happens to you, I don't know what I'm...
Mosquito. Thank you, Mosquito. Nobody ever asked me what it felt like to be me. So thank you for everything.
No, Abilene. Thank you.
All right, so we are gonna go back and stop the share. All right, so if everyone wants to turn on their camera, I know Summers is not working. Turn off your camera, or sorry, turn on your camera and turn off mute. We're gonna have a little bit of a discussion about that. So, has anyone seen The Help before? Like, had you read the book or seen the movie before? Yeah. Okay. So you can kind of see the way that they portrayed these characters. Now, tell me a little bit about how did they differentiate each character? What were some of the things? And this is just like an open discussion, very low key.
Well, I think the most obvious thing was the voice.
Mm-hmm.
They're very different.
Yeah, totally. Jason says voices too. Yeah. So definitely the voices. What else?
Like their demeanor and mannerisms, like between like the white lady and like the child, she was like turned around, and that's like, and like, I forget the word, like less like, it was like more like demeaning almost, like because she was little, like a little kid, and like the adult was like face forward, and you can tell that she was like in a position of authority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what about kind of like the facial expressions, even between, I think a great example is Sarah's portrayal of Miss Skeeter and Miss Hilly. Like they're very, very different characters. How did she do that? Like what kind of thought do you think she even put into the voices? I like what Ruby was saying too.
I feel like you could kind of like tell what sort of person they were just like based off like Miss, I forget her name, but not Miss Skeeter, but you could see that she kind of had like this mean expression, and her voice was a bit more harsh and grown up than like Miss Skeeter, who was kind of younger, nicer, and more innocent looking like, and you could kind of get all these, and they didn't explicitly say them. But
Yeah, totally. Even, yeah, just like the way they hold themselves. Like Miss Hilly's like very official and kind of like has her like hands here, and she like looks around very regally and like, I don't know, almost like she owns everybody. Like, yeah, I'm like the queen of the town, whatever. And then Miss Skeeter's like, oh my gosh, I have this idea for a book. Like, I feel like it'd be super funny. Like, I'm a little nervous. What do you think about that? Like, she really has that like innocent energy. Um, what did you think about when they're interviewing the different maids and Deb has to do all of those different characters? How did she do that with such quick little, I don't know, like they only say a couple sentences each. Did you feel like they were different? How did she do that?
Well, I've watched the movie and read the book so many times that I like memorized the lines, but how she like she was walking in a circle, so every time she appeared in front of the stage, you could tell she was a new person.
Mm-hmm.
And that was easy to like know that she wasn't the same person just saying, sentences about other people. It made me understand that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I thought that was really cool. And as you go more into each different event, you'll kind of learn the differences because there is like the traditional popping, like we talked about, but there is also just a lot of different options with like duo, like walking across somebody and suddenly they're a different person. Like that's super helpful. So I really loved that scene in particular because I think despite having these characters that are only in there for a short amount of time, those characters still had growth. Like when one of them is talking about how she kept getting like assaulted at work and she's like, he forced me over and over, but then like whatever, he never tried again. Like even her mannerisms change and you can tell like there's growth in her as a character. She's not always just angry. She like, there's some turmoil going on there. And so I thought they did a wonderful job. That's one of my very favorite examples. So I guess I would just say, as you are developing your character and you're kind of learning through that process, again, just kind of find a character that works for you, something that you think you can pull off, someone maybe that you relate to. I think if you kind of like their motives, if you like the message of the piece, that really helps. But figuring out like your own strengths of if you look young, if you look old, if you can do a really amazing old lady voice, go for it. Like just be wise about what you're picking. And then just watching that progression, even just mapping out kind of the climax throughout the piece to make sure that the character is building and growing and that they are all distinct enough. So those are the main points that I had to share about character development and kind of building that character. But I'm going to just go back to screen sharing for a second and go to my PowerPoint. So I spent the last few days creating this link to useful speech resources, and I will make sure it's available to all of you. But throughout my time on the team, I developed this piece library, and so it has a description of a lot of different pieces, their author, and like a little like blurb or two about them, and if someone in the town or in the team recently did it, or if it's like one stuff. So I have some resources for humorous, some for dramatic, some for duo, and so hopefully that's helpful to you guys. It's like 9 pages. You're welcome to add more to it as more come up, but just as I was trying to help people find pieces, I found it useful to have that. I have our team's YouTube page. I actually made a presentation for JFK High School. I was a guest lecturer like 4 years ago for them. So that's kind of the basics of speech. I found a couple online guides and kind of building characters. And then I wanted to share some videos of past team members. So some people from my era, Camila got 5th in California, which was amazing. She had a phenomenal presentation of the KFD. So we have a couple dramatics there. We have a few duos, like me and some of my old partners. I'm not trying to make it just of me. It just happens to be the videos I have. I have a TI. And then I found these super helpful as I was kind of teaching myself speech, actually. But I have some of my very favorite DIs, some amazing duos, including The Help, as we already saw. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. They did at Nationals my senior year and got 2nd. It was incredible. So I would recommend that. And then I have a couple HIs. This guy won Nationals my senior year as well. So he does a really, really good job. If you're looking into popping, he is one of the best kind of poppers and has really different voices, and so I found that super helpful. So I just put that together for you guys. Hopefully, as you are just beginning your speech career, hopefully you can find that helpful. And the team should have different resources if Miss Woodman was able to pass them on to your current coach. I have like a lot of different old scripts that I think should have still been together and ones that the team bought over the years. So think of books, think of movies. Just remember that as you are going through and picking a piece, you need to end up citing it. So for state qualifiers, you need to actually have photocopies of the pages highlighted with what you say. And so you can't just like make it up unless it's an OPP and you write it yourself. Just make sure that you have like a legal script from the beginning so you don't find out 3/4 of the way through the year that your script won't work. So if you have questions, I am going to put my email in the chat, and I'll make sure it's on the Google Classroom as well. And you're welcome to reach out to me for anything. I'm very excited that all of you are considering pursuing speech, and I know Emmy and Jason, you've already been in that realm for a little bit, but I love it. I think it's a really creative outlet. I think that you really get to make a difference, and it's pretty incredible to have like a room of grown adult judges like crying or laughing and know that your words made that difference. So I wish you all the best. I hope you're able to explore a lot of different events. And I am going to stop the recording right now, but if you have individual questions, you're welcome to unmute, or you can also put them in the chat, but I'll stop recording.